Every single FNAF game can be softlocked, but I've been wondering which can be softlocked the quickest. Ruin, for one, can be softlocked in 2 minutes and 48 seconds, and while this has been discovered by another YouTuber, the 2 other games that he covered can be done way faster. For example, Security Breach has a known way to go out of bounds from Freddy's room, which is by using bowling balls, which while inconsistent can still be done first try in a good time. And yes, while that would be good, it's apparently only possible for people who have bought the game originally. I am not one of those people. So instead I turned to the one avenue that never actually failed to teach me something new, speedrun.com. And after watching a single Vanny speedrun, I found the best way to get softlocked. And the way to do this is by using these objects to scale up to the top of Freddy's room, which has no roof. And that means we can just run straight into the void. And as there's no save point for us to teleport to, that makes us softlocked. But the only issue with this is that it's also incredibly inconsistent. So it may be difficult for me to get a good run. But it thankfully didn't take too long to get the luck I needed. On to Secret of the Mimic. So my first thoughts for how I could softlock Secret of the Mimic was how I showed in my second softlock video, which is by using the speedrun strategy to get out of bounds. And the way to do that is to get on top of this handrail by periodically spamming left click and crouch and then walking to the other side, which for some reason brings us out of bounds, and then we can fall in a softlock ourselves. But after going through the whole intro sequence, including the extremely long welcome show, gave me a time of just below 4 minutes, which was very slow. So to try and go quicker, there is a method in the game where you can completely skip the welcome show, and that's by standing on the edge of the door and then sprinting forward while spamming F11. That changes the game between windowed and full screen. And then once we do that enough, we can completely skip the trigger that even closes the door. So we run back out, that for some reason deloads the whole thing, and then we can walk back in and it's completely skipped. And if we use this in a run instead of waiting, it cuts the time down to a respectable 2 minutes and 47 seconds, but we can still do better if we abuse F11 just a bit more. And after watching a Pet the Robot speedrun of all things, I found out that you can completely deload the game right after opening the first gate of the game. And the way we do this is by crouching at this structure, pressing F11 to go into the gap, and then F11 again to leave it. And then once we're through and reapply our low quality settings to get a high FPS count, because I don't have that good of a PC, we can basically just go to the side of this slide and then rapidly move our mouse around, which for some reason can warp us right on top of it. And then if we're lucky enough, we can get the game to deload just by running over this fence, which is very difficult, and I was only able to do it 1 or 2 times after a long while, which is when I also remembered that when we opened the door to get to this place, it created the perfect spot that we are unable to move from. So instead of just trying to run over the fence that is also incredibly inconsistent like everything else I'm talking about, we could just run to the side, and that should save us quite a lot of time. And after a few failed attempts, I was able to get a run that got me softlocked in 56 seconds. But I knew if I pushed it just a bit more, I could get it under 50 seconds, which after many more failed attempts, I finally got a good run. With those 3 games covered, let's move backwards and cover the first couple games, FNAF 1 and FNAF 2. These were both the hardest games for me to originally softlock, just because of how the softlock actually works. And for us to softlock in these games, we need to enter a glitch night, also known as night 8, as that is the only place that in the end will never progress from the 6 AM screen. For us to even enter this glitch night, we first need to make sure we have both completed night 6 and a custom night, or this just will not work at all. And then once that's done, if we rapidly move our mouse between all the menu options, I can slow it down and you can see night 8 appear under continue instead of night 5. But for us to actually enter this night, all we need to do is time it perfectly so that after clicking continue, in the few frames it takes for it to load the night, we need to move our mouse and get night 8 to show under continue. and to actually register. But there is a small trick in FNAF 1 I can use to make this way more consistent, and that's simply just by lowering my FPS to a low number, which for me was 5. And this just makes the trick way more consistent to pull off. And then once we're in the night, if we just set our FPS to 1, it just cheeses it. And that gave me a time of 9 minutes and 16 seconds. But as for FNAF 2, there's no easy way to consistently get into this night or easily beat it like I could do in FNAF 1. But thankfully, when I was able to get into the night, the only animatronic that is there is Withered Foxy. So as long as you handle your flashlight battery well enough and you don't open the cameras, because that just sentences you to death. So I'm gonna sit here for like however long it takes. I forgot. You should be able to beat the night, which I was able to do in 8 minutes and 22 seconds. It's weird why it's only Foxy and no other animatronics. But I think we're guaranteed a win here. There we are. But compared to these two, FNAF 3 and 4 are a complete walk in the park. All because of just how many places these games have that aren't time limited. For example, with FNAF 3, it has a lot of mini games that you can play while in the nights, and those don't progress time at all. So in my case, this is exactly what we can use to softlock ourselves. And the easiest and quickest game we can do this in is BB's Air Adventure. So once we double click the poster to actually start it and make our way through the mini game, once we reach this ledge, if we jump off while holding right, we can trap ourselves in this corner with a time of just over 40 seconds. And as we can't jump high enough or go through any walls, we are completely trapped here until we restart the night. And believe it or not, FNAF 4 is even easier to softlock due to the post and pre-night sequences. So if we were to start the crying animation and hold down either Control, Enter or Space while rapidly left clicking, it completely skips through any text that shows up on the screen. And the reason this helps us that isn't speed is because skipping the last line that shows up in one of these pre or post night sequences, it skips setting a variable that causes the cutscene to actually end, and that means we are completely softlocked, and it is so consistent that basically anyone could get the same 28-second time that I got. Now, unlike what many people may think, FNAF 4 isn't actually that easy to softlock, mostly due to the warps you can go to, but it is still very quick. To softlock it, we need to head straight to the Halloween update area, which we can do by going through this tree and following through. And once we enter Foxy Fighters, we can mute the game using Control and S, and as long as we keep that muted until the text stops appearing, we've completely softlocked the game. I'm not completely sure why it does this, but it just does for some reason. And I was able to do this in just under 1 minute and 10 seconds. But we could do this quicker by using save deletion. So if we start a save on one FNAF world window and then wipe all my saves on another window, after we progress the wiped save and then go back to the title screen, we can continue that save that we were just on, and if we reset the character positions, it means we can now no longer progress as there's nothing to actually select, meaning we can be softlocked in just about 30 seconds. And sister location, unlike the previous few, will take way longer to softlock, especially if you for some reason choose to play from the beginning of the game, as it's right at the ending. And the way we softlock it is by setting our FPS to 1 when we enter the scooping room, or if you don't set your FPS to 1, if you just find a way to skip this frame of the scooper animation, you'll also be softlocked, because that frame is for some reason what actually makes the game progress. But either way, for me to softlock this game from the start of night 5, it took me more than 5.5 minutes. Which is crazy. But to completely flip that on its head, here are some of the quickest games in the FNAF series: Help Wanted 1 and Help Wanted 2. And I will be honest, because Help Wanted 2 had to be downgraded for me to softlock, as the only other softlock I've seen with evidence was in VR, and I do not have the money for that. But Help Wanted 1 seems to be a bit very broken, because if we open the options and then select a different one, we are completely softlocked, because it seems like the devs forgot to put a back button that worked. And this seems to be a similar time to what AR would have been, as one of the updates seems to have just completely broke it, and anytime you launch it, it just crashes instantly. And for Help Wanted 2, the way we can softlock this in a previous update is by pausing the game as soon as we get jump scared, as that just completely bricks it. And if I use the cold storage minigame to do this, from the start of a completely new game, I can get softlocked in 11 seconds. which is very good. FNAF 6 is another game that, while being jam-packed, is quite difficult to find a softlock for. But in the end, out of every single place that could have had a softlock, the only one I was able to find was in the salvage section. Because if you were to skip it as soon as the button appears, well, the buttons will show up to either choose to salvage or throw it. They just wouldn't work, and that means you're soft locked. And if we start from a new game, it's done in just under 3 minutes. And now for the final game, we have the most confusing softlock I've basically ever seen in any game, which happened to me on Into the Pit. And what happened to me in my first playthrough of this was I ended up getting a checkpoint that had already passed while being in a completely different location, and it basically locked me out of doing anything further. And while originally I couldn't explain it, it was so early into the game that compared to the others that I know of, this was the only thing I could actually use if I wanted a pretty decent time. So while looking through old footage that I thought I had lost, I was able to find out what I did. In the playground at the school, if you inspect the firecracker and then stay on that text while the bell rings and the teacher starts talking, you can leave to the title, which after doing that and reopening the game means you're in the school while still having the objective to enter the classroom, which means you can't progress and can't speak to the person that teaches you about the firecracker. And if you do this from a completely new game, you can softlock in just about 12 minutes and 26 seconds, give or take a few from poor movement or whatever. And this can be shortened to just 1 minute and 32 if we're going from the start of day 2.